You think you're buying a growth ETF. You're actually buying a bet. And depending on which one you pick, that bet pays $12.5 million on $100,000 over 30 years or $49 million. Same money, same time, different bet. In this video, John takes $100,000 and runs it through three of the most popular growth ETFs in the world: QQQ, VGT, and SCHG. Same money in each. Three things we compare them on: what they cost, what they bet on, and how hard each one is betting. And in the end, I'll show you and John which one of these would have turned that $100,000 into nearly $49 million, and which one would have left him almost $37 million behind. Okay, so the first thing John pulls up is the cheapest part of the comparison, the fees. Every ETF charges what's called an expense ratio. It's the slice of John's money the fund keeps every year just for running it. SCHG charges 0.04%, VGT charges 0.09%, QQQ charges 0.18%. Those numbers look small. They look like rounding errors. So John does what most people don't. He turns them into actual dollars. On $100,000 invested, here's what each one costs every year. SCHG takes $40, VGT takes $90, QQQ takes $180. Now the gap is real. SCHG and VGT are basically background noise, but QQQ, that's $180 a year, 4.5 times more than SCHG every year on the same starting amount. And here's the thing, that money doesn't disappear, it goes somewhere. In SCHG, $40 leaves John's account every year and goes into Schwab's pocket. In QQQ, it's $180, and that money lands in Invesco's pocket. So SCHG gets a $140 head start every year. Over 30 years, that gap matters more than it looks, but not in the way most people assume. So if fees were everything, this video would be over right here. So why isn't it? Because the fee only tells you how much each fund costs. It doesn't tell you what it actually owns. And that's where these three stop looking like the same investment. Now John pulls up what each fund actually holds. And this is where they stop being three flavors of the same thing. Every ETF on this list tracks an index. That just means the fund is built to mirror a specific list of companies. The index decides what's in, the fund follows. VGT tracks the MSCI US Information Technology Index. That is pure tech, software, hardware, semiconductors, IT services. That's the whole universe. If a company isn't tech, it's not in VGT. QQQ tracks the NASDAQ 100 index. That's the 100 biggest non-financial companies on the NASDAQ. Tech-heavy, sure, but broader. Costco is in there. Pepsi is in there. Amgen, the biotech company, is in there. None of those are tech, but all of them are in QQQ. SCHG tracks the Dow Jones US Large Cap Growth Index. That one's the broadest of the three. Large cap growth across every sector: tech, consumer, healthcare, financials, anything growing. So look at what's actually happening here. Three growth ETFs, three completely different bets on what growth even means. VGT is betting tech wins. QQQ is betting NASDAQ-listed innovation wins, which is broader than tech but narrower than the market. Meanwhile, SCHG is betting large-cap growth wins no matter where it shows up. Three different theses, and John has to figure out which one he believes. So now we know what each fund believes, we know what each one costs. The thing we don't know yet is how much each one is willing to put behind the bet. And in the end, I'll show you how, with that decision, which ETF would turn $100,000 into nearly $49 million, and which one would have left John almost $37 million behind. Look, most growth ETF comparisons skip this part. They tell you what each fund holds, but they don't tell you how hard each one is pressing the bet. Here's what that means. Every ETF has a list of holdings, but not every holding is the same size. The biggest companies in the fund get the most money, and the size of the biggest holdings tells you how concentrated the fund actually is. So John pulls up the top 10 holdings in each fund, and here's the first thing he notices. They're all chasing the same names: NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft. Top 3 positions in every single one of these ETFs. The question isn't what they hold, it's how much of each fund is sitting on those names. In VGT, the top 10 holdings make up about 59% of the entire fund. In SCHG, it's almost the same, 58%. And in QQQ, it's lower, around 47%. So at the top 10 level, VGT and SCHG look pretty similar. That's not where the real gap shows up. Here's where it does. Look at just the top 3 holdings: NVIDIA, Apple, and Microsoft. The same 3 companies in every fund. In VGT, those 3 names alone make up nearly 45% of the entire fund. In SCHG, they're about 30%. In QQQ, they're closer to 22%. Stay with me because this is the part that actually matters. If John puts $100,000 into VGT, about $45,000 of that is riding on just 3 companies. The same 3 names in SCHG only get about $30,000 of his money. In QQQ, those 3 companies are getting around $22,000. Same names, same companies, wildly different exposure. And here's what that does. It amplifies. If NVIDIA has a great year, VGT pulls more return out of NVIDIA than the others do, because more of VGT's money is sitting on NVIDIA in the first place. If NVIDIA had a bad year, VGT loses harder. Then there's the second layer, and this one's not even close. VGT is 99.6% technology. Almost the entire fund is one sector. QQQ is about 51% technology, with the rest spread across communication, consumer, healthcare. SCHG is 45% technology, with the broadest spread of the 3. So concentration isn't good or bad here, it's a lever, and the lever cuts both ways. VGT is the bet that says, I know which companies are going to win, and I'm putting more of my money on them. SCHG is the opposite bet. It says, I don't know which ones win, so I'll spread it out across more sectors. QQQ is the hedge in the middle. Concentration is conviction, and these 3 funds are all betting at very different levels of conviction. That's the framework. 3 funds, 3 bets, 3 different levels of conviction. The question now is whether the bet actually pays. And the receipts are in the appreciation rate. Here's where the concentration math actually shows up. Every ETF has an average annual appreciation rate. That's just how much the share price has grown per year on average. It's the engine that drives long-term return. Over the last decade, VGT has averaged 22.89% annual appreciation. QQQ has averaged 20.01%. SCHG has averaged 17.39%. Those gaps look small on the surface. They're not. VGT didn't outperform by accident. VGT was the most concentrated bet on the companies that actually exploded: Apple, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Broadcom. The same names that did the heavy lifting on every tech run of the last 10 years. VGT had more of its money sitting on those names than QQQ or SCHG did. The bet paid. The receipts are in the appreciation rate. SCHG spread the same money across more companies, including ones that didn't explode. The diversification was real. It also cost SCHG a return. There's a dividend story here too, but it's a footnote on a video about growth. QQQ has the highest dividend growth rate of the 3 at 9.12%, well ahead of VGT at only 5.49% and SCHG at 4.58%. That matters in income-focused videos, not this one. Growth ETFs aren't bought for the dividend. They're bought for what the share price does. And what the share price does is what John is actually buying. Those are the rates. They're what the bets have produced per year. The real question, the one $100,000 actually answers, is what happens when those rates run for 30 years. And here's what the projections show. After the first year, all three funds basically look identical. SCHG is at $117,770, QQQ is at $120,440, VGT is at $123,260. Roughly a $5,000 spread on $100,000. Anyone watching just year one would call this a wash. That's the trap. That's only year one. Skip ahead 9 years and watch what starts happening. 10 years in, the gap is real. SCHG is projected at $506,000, QQQ is at $633,000, and VGT is at $797,000. VGT is now nearly $300,000 ahead of SCHG. The funds aren't the same animal anymore. The concentration mechanism is showing up. 20 years in, here's where they sit. SCHG is at $2.5 million. QQQ is at $3.95 million. VGT is at $6.27 million. VGT is now about 2.5 times SCHG. That 5% appreciation gap John saw earlier, it's now a $3.7 million difference. Same starting amount, same 20 years. Give it 10 more years, and here's where the same $100,000 ends up. SCHG lands at $12.58 million. QQQ doubles that at $24.57 million. And VGT, $49.3 million. That's what 22.89% annual appreciation does when you give it 3 full decades without touching it. Same starting line, same 30 years, and almost a $37 million gap between the smallest finish and the biggest. VGT didn't win because it tracked something different. All three are growth ETFs. All three hold the same biggest companies. VGT won because it was the most concentrated bet on the companies that actually grew. In short, SCHG was the safer bet. QQQ was the famous bet. VGT was the conviction bet. And that's the trade growth ETFs make. They're not all the same, not even close. The label hides the bet, and the bet is what compounds. Now, what happens when you take the same $100,000 and run it head-to-head between Fidelity and Schwab index funds? 5 rounds, 30 years, a gap of over $1.5 million between them. That video is on screen right now.